Joining us for the Baylor press conference is head coach Nikki Collin. Coach, begin with your opening statement, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Well, thanks for being here. Really excited to be in Portland. Certainly a goal of ours was to be here, whether it was here or Albany, and just excited with the level of competition, the city, everything. The Moda Center, last time I was here, I watched Dame and CJ play, so exciting to be out there. So grateful to be here, happy to take any questions.
Start down here in front.
It's a fight.
One of you, please go ahead.
Sabrina Merchant, The Athletic. Coach, open-ended question here. When it comes to scouting Juju, what's the first thing that stands out in terms of watching her play?
She's really, really talented. I think when Juju's in transition, that's the most challenging space. When she has space to operate, she's such a rhythm player. I would, very similar to Maddie Booker in our league, like when she gets to her spots, really dangerous because of her size. So I think that's where it is. She's a rhythm player. So whether it's off the jab, whether it's off the bounce, she's just really, really good in isolations. Probably, if you look analytically, plays in the highest volume of isolations of anybody in the country and does it pretty successfully. So, very good out-of-system player.
Coach, Zach Smith, Waco Trib. For you, looking a little bit bigger picture, you've talked a lot about how much fun this team is and getting this far with this team. For you personally, what does getting here kind of mean in the bigger picture of your coaching career so far?
I think anytime you're hired into a position like Baylor, this is the expectation, and I think it's about meeting expectations, but my expectations aren't really driven necessarily by what people think they should be. It's more about wanting to be considered one of the best at what I do and how we do it. And so I think it's just special to be with this group that's truly ours. These are not a bunch of inherited players that I'm winning with great players. These are players that believed in Baylor, that believed in me, believed that we could still be Baylor with Nikki Collin in charge. And so it's about doing it our way, but still being really, really successful doing it. So certainly we felt like we had the pieces to be here when the season started. And so, it's about, for us meeting those expectations.
Lindsay?
Hello? Okay. Lindsay Schnell, USA Today. Nikki, we've talked a lot with Lindsay Gottlieb about how her experience in the NBA has helped her coach Juju, to your point, like they get her in space all the time. I wondered, do you think that your W experience helps you in terms of prepping for a player who could start for the Pistons right now?
How about the Liberty? Come on. Women's empowerment here. I think the W was really, really good for me in general. I think it's a league where you have to scheme against the best, game in and game out. You coach some of the best, but you have to scheme against the best. It's always a chess match from one time to the next. You don't play anybody once, and so you have to make in-game adjustments. You have to make nobody plays in a series at this level, but it's that same concept of having to out-scheme, out-think, out-coach, out-work, and really in a lot of ways convince your players what will work. Half our job in coaching is being good salesmen, because it's about giving them this blueprint of how we can be successful and getting them to believe that if they do it, they will be successful both individually and collectively. And so, I think that's the biggest part of scouting is getting them to believe that, hey, if we do these three things, we've got a really, really good shot to win this game. And so I think the W is about spacing. It's about player and personnel management, which is what our game is now collegiately. And so it's you feel confident and comfortable in late game situations because whether you're in that WNBA or the NBA, you're going to play 4 games a week and 3 of them are going to be within 5 points, and you can get a 16-point lead, and at some point it's going to get to 6, and you're going to have to use your timeouts wisely and save them. And so, I've probably called 1 defensive timeout in 3 years. I believe in the importance of saving them. And I feel like you can call a timeout on offense to set your defense, because to me, if you call a timeout on defense, the opposition's going to know, hey, they're getting ready to press, they're getting ready to trap, they're going to look for this. So I think that's a big part of coaching at the pro level, is understanding the schemes and in the late game situations.
Sabrina Merchant, The Athletic. Speaking of your time in the WNBA, Kurt Miller posted a picture of, when you and Chris
In a bathing
Koplanis-
suit. Yeah, thanks, Kurt.
when you and Chris were on his staff together back in Connecticut, just now that you're going up against him in this next matchup, Chris, not Kurt.
Yeah.
Just what did you remember about his growth as a coach, and what did you guys learn? From
Yeah,
that
I'm going to
experience
call
with
Kurt out first, because let's be honest, he's here to scout. He's not here to support us. I think, Chris is one of those, you get in this profession, and I hope that people saw me this way. Wow, she's really young, but she knows what she's doing. She's got a bright future in this profession. I think Chris made a really unique and tough transition, honestly, I think, with the Sun, because when you're a young, he was probably 26 when Kurt hired him, and he was our ops/video/ did a little bit of everything. And so when you make that transition and you're working with players who are older than you, and then you move into an assistant coaching position, and then you move into basically a defensive coordinator position, it shows you that's not an easy transition for 30-year-olds to look at this young guy and say, yeah, I really want to listen to him. And so he's really, really talented. I was excited to see him move over to Lindsay's staff. He loves Southern Cal. He's a New York boy, but when he was at USC the first time, I think fell in love with being out in LA. And so I just think he adds a lot to their bench, and it's just good to be around people that you love. This profession is so small, and so being around the people that you really care about, that helped you. Kurt made me ready to be a head coach. Being a defensive coordinator, and him allowing me the autonomy to be in huddles and sit in front and diagram stuff, I think, was one of the reasons why the Atlanta Dream felt like she's ready. She's been in those huddles, she's made those decisions. And so, I owe a lot to a lot of people in this profession getting me to where I'm at.
Alexa Philippou, ESPN. Just given your experience in the pros and now back in the college level, do you see this year's freshman class in particular as being that kind of transcendent force that can help even drive the sport's popularity even more, or where do you feel like they can help the sport even grow moving forward?
Yeah, I think, we've talked a lot about the momentum that we have in women's sports, not just basketball, but in general, the explosion based on Caitlin Clark. But I think this freshman class, I watched Hannah Hidalgo play with Philly Rise and was a big fan, but really had no idea that she would be this good this quickly, and really all the different ways. Certainly I thought she'd be a Nat on D and get to the rim, but the way she's done it, the way she's led, the way they played in their round of 32 game, I just, Notre Dame looked like a machine. And so I think it's a class, when you think back to the Skylar, Elena, Griner class, and the big three coming into the W, and the impact that all three of those players have made. I think that's a group that can really, really be special, and they're all unique. They're different, but they all play an exciting brand of basketball, and I think that's what stands out, not just that they're productive, but that they're fun to watch. And I think when you watch our game, you get a lot, women's basketball is great because it's a little old school and they move the ball and this and that. But I think these guys are fundamentally sound, but they're also they're exciting. And I think that is good for our game.
Chad Bothering, Kid of TX. I know when we left, or after the game against Virginia Tech, you said you kind of just let your team play. You weren't really calling a lot of plays. And how much of that is the trust that you have in your players at this point of the season, and also how much of that is just the fact that they've learned from you to this point where they also just kind of trust you as well and everything?
Well, I think there were a couple things that went into play. First of all, it was so loud in there was no way to call plays. And I thought our advantage against Virginia Tech was our athleticism and our speed. And so slowing Jada Walker down in transition to call play wouldn't have been a good choice. I think there's a time and a place. I thought we really executed at a high level out of timeouts. And so I think there's time and space to like really get them to understand and execute. But I think one of the things that I learned a little bit about this team, kind of in the midst of our losing streak is that we're not a great execution team when I have to slow them down and we have to go from A to B and B to C. We're better playing in action, early actions, playing off the second action. If our drags and step-ups are good, it doesn't really matter after that because we're going to get to an advantage, whether it's off a drift pass, whether it's, someone trailing the play. And so, I thought in that game, Sarah Andrews really led us early when they were in zone. I thought we shot them out of their zone really, really quickly, which was good. And then I thought, Jada playing downhill, we knew she had an advantage on as good as Georgia Amor as we felt like we could get her in ball screens and put her in Strack and ball screens and be really, really effective. And so you can't overcomplicate the game for 18 to 22-year-olds. You just can't. And I think that's something that I've learned about this group is the less I call, the better they execute.
Derek Smith, Baylor Radio. Obviously, Juju's the focal point when a lot of people look at USC, but what else do you see that's led to their success as a team?
Mackenzie Forbes, Padilla, Marshall, Davis, I think they all understand their roles. I mean, when you watch, a year ago, I watched Columbia play, I feel like 40 times, and I know they didn't play that many games, but it felt like it because they made the big run in the NIT, but you knew there were a bunch of kids that couldn't come back and play their COVID year at Columbia. And so whether it was Jada Patrick, whether it was Davis, we were watching them, and Davis was a scorer. And I know she's had some injuries, but, she's kind of owned this, I'm going to get on the glass roll, and I'm going to screen, and I'm going to run. And so I think they play well off one another. I think you've got Batman and Robin with Forbes. I don't see her as an understudy. I just see her as a player that makes plays for them. Forbes, if she gets hot from three, it can be scary. Padilla, you can't give an open shot. She's the kid that knows her role, doesn't take many shots inside the arc, and then Marshall, who was their leading scorer a year ago, has settled in and sometimes gets a lot of touches and sometimes, rebounds because she doesn't even make it down before a shot goes up in transition. But and then defensively, I just don't think they beat themselves. They've got length. Even though they're not super deep and they don't play a ton of players, I think their length bothers people in gaps. Marshall's a rim protector, so I don't think they beat themselves at the defensive end. And then I think they're never out of a game. I mean, you watch the Arizona game, they're down 10, and the next thing you know, it's a 1-point game. So they can really heat it up, especially in transition.
Kevin Pelton, ESPN.com. First, I'm curious, is there any interesting story behind coming to a Blazers game?
We were actually, my GM and I came out to watch the Civil War series when Sabrina and Satu were seniors. Destiny Slocum was at Oregon State. So, and both my video coordinator and my athletic trainer worked for the Trailblazers. So Jessica Cohen had left the Dream to come work for the Trailblazers. So we came into town a day early to go to a Trailblazer game and see former staff. And so, yeah, we were just in town. That was the weekend that we lost Kobe, too. So it was a pretty memorable weekend. I was trying to get back to the Nines because that place was so nice. But anyway, yeah.
And then on the topic of WNBA experience, do you think it was helpful the way that the rules in the college game ended up kind of aligning with the pro game with quarters advancing the ball?
Yes. I think it's good for our game in general. I think when you whether it's FIBA rules, kind of aligning the similar rules so as players are growing up, they understand them, whether it's, we had players playing USA basketball playing different rules than they were going to play in college, and so I think it's good for our game. I think it makes end-of-game situations. Let's be honest, in the women's game, when you had 3.5 seconds to go, you were rarely going to get a shot off if you had to go end-to-end, and if you were, it was going to be a contested running 30-footer at best, and so now to have that opportunity to create a late game situation, You know, you could see how frustrated I was when it was 1.8 and Kenny had a free timeout because of a clock issue. I know. But that's how good I think Kenny is in those situations. It's a one-possession game, 1.8 seconds, one missed switch. You get a 3 and you're playing overtime. And so I think it's just an exciting part of the game that I do think is both good for our game, but also something that I enjoyed coming back to be able to continue to do.
Alexa Philpott, ESPN. For either or both of you, just being such a balanced team offensively, how do you feel like that can help you in a situation like going into tomorrow's game where any player could pop off face-off matchups, and how can that help you just go far in the postseason?
I think you said it best. I think it's hard to scheme for us because we have so many people that can score. Whoever's our top leading scorer doesn't have to have a great night every night because we have so many people that can go anywhere else and be a top scorer. So that's the beauty about this team.
Yeah, just piggyback off what she said. You have to really play as honest and just be on your P's and Q's because like anybody can go off. So.
Hello. Oh, yeah. Zach Smith, Waco Trib. Sarah, you're the only player that Coach Collin didn't recruit. What about her made you stay? And then how would you kind of describe her as a coach?
I stayed because, for one, she's been where I wanted to be. At the end of the day, she's coached in that league, and she's built me as a player, helped me with my confidence, and I wanted to go to the league at the end of the day, so it was no doubt in my mind that I wanted to stay and play for her. She's an amazing coach. She's a player's coach. She knows how to get us going. She knows our tendencies, what we like to do and what we don't like to do. We play the game at a different type of speed just because of where she came from. So I think, playing for her is amazing because at the end of the day, we all got the same goal, and that's to go to the league.
So we go right here, and then we'll go back to Alexa.
Foster Nicholas, Baylor Lariat. Sarah, you talked about it, but how much does that pace help you guys in a situation like this, and does it give you an advantage?
I think it does. When we play defense, first of all, it starts for us on defense because our offense is so easy. We push the ball in transition. A lot of times, sometimes we don't even call plays. We just play out of like drags and step-ups. That's what's so special about us is that when we get the ball in transition, we're deadly. Like, we don't have to call plays. We just play in transition.
Alexa Philpott. For going up against Juju in particular, what have you guys been focusing on in the scout? I know, obviously, Coach is very scout-heavy and detail-oriented, so what are the messages you guys are getting so far and how to best slow her down?
Just got to play hard. We have to stop Juju, but we have to stop everybody else on the team as well. So I wouldn't just say there's anything in particular. We just have to play hard all night. She's going to get her shots. She's going to make some tough shots, but we just got to live with those shots and just keep on playing.
Zach Smith, Waco Trib. Bugs, how important is it to have players like Sarah, Jana, that have kind of been in this bigger environment to kind of lean on?
It's really great because they have the experience, and they're also people that I look up to. So in those situations, they can get us to like calm down, and we listen to them in those moments. But they're just always there to keep you like, hey, like we're still in this, still game time. We're good. We're here. So it's just great to lean on them and knowing that they have experience and knowing that they know like they've been in these situations before and they know what can happen, what we need to do, and what we need to execute. It's just great to know and have that knowledge.
Come down here to Alexa.
For you guys, like coming off of conference play, which had its challenges, what do you feel like were the biggest things that you were able to take from that make you guys playing your best basketball right now at this time?
Actually, I'm kind of glad we hit adversity then rather than now. I'd rather learn from those mistakes early on in the season rather than coming into March, losing the first game or so. I think we've grown as a team. I'm starting to see that team that came out and went 13-0. That's what's so special about us. But most of all, we grew. We could have folded. We could have been done early after that first game we lost in the tournament, and we could have folded the first game coming into March Madness. But I think we came in with a different type of firepower, with a different look in our eyes, and we're going to continue to take it one game at a time.
Yeah, a lot of growth there, and I just think that it helped us build for moments like this. Like now it's time for the nitty gritty, and if we hadn't, like she said, hit that diversity early on, I don't think we would be as successful as we are now. It helped us turn our mindsets around and help us grow and show us a lot of areas that we needed to improve in.
You touched on it briefly earlier that it's not just Juju Watkins. It's a very solid team, especially defensively. What have you talked about in terms of just getting the ball moved around with a solid defense as that the SC has?
We have set screens. We have to be very intentional, I feel like. We have to get those little details in there. I think that's what's going to separate us and help us be successful, is just those little details and really being intentional about what we're doing on the court.